50 minutes. So kind of the goal of putting this together today, I have to give Cecile and your organization a lot of credit, because I think we initially had this conversation in June of 2019 to get this date set. Literally, that's how far in advance. So not that I'm that popular, you just like scheduling that far in advance, so I'm happy. Excited to be here today, and also to talk about something that I'm personally very passionate about as well. So when we had a conversation, thinking about where you're all at in your relative stages of education and career plans and so on, regardless of kind of your faculty and discipline, where you want to go. Kind of the goal today, how do we thread that all together? So you're going to hear a few things. We'll talk about critical sales skills, which you'll likely hear me talk as much about relationships. Part of the reason I wrote a book on relationships as well, because building relationships and trust inevitably can lead to sales. We were just talking to one of your colleagues here a little while ago, talking about the industry you may want to get into that sometimes has a negative perception of how people sell the product, but ultimately it's about the individual that's selling the product. So let's get started, and I'm fairly quick on the fly, so if you have a question you feel you don't want to wait till the end, just kind of raise your hand, and I'll take advantage of answering that as quickly as I can so you get as much value. Also, you all have a handout and a copy of the book that jots some notes down, basically just some prints of some slides, not every slide, just to really put it in for efficiency that you had the most impactful slides tied into your package today as well. So one of the goals that I have, in light of all of the quick time that we have today in 50 minutes or less, we're really going to talk about kind of 4 things, and then if we have enough time, I'll open it up to the Q&A as well. But I want to talk about sales skills, at least from my perspective. I've been doing what I do professionally for almost 14 years with my business, and then prior to that I had a long-standing career. So I've been in a career environment as long as most of you have been around, if you will, whether you're in Edmonton or alive for that matter. So hopefully I have some experience that I can share upon that. And then of course the second part is going to be on relationship building and simple, I'll call it, tips and tricks that I think are valuable, that have served me well. I'm going to touch a bit on social media because it's an important aspect, but I'm going to give you some advice on how you can leverage great tools up there to build relationships as well, not just to market yourself. And then of course, how do we wrap that up in some goals and objectives that I would recommend if I were sitting in your seat today, what would give you the greatest value? And then again, giving you opportunity for some questions at the end as well. So let's get started here, and you can feel free to jot some notes down. So in our business at X5 Management, doing this for almost 14 years, we do training, coaching, consulting. The purpose I bring that up is that we get a lot of phone calls sometimes and say, hey X5, can you help us with our sales team do more in sales? So everybody wants sales growth. So we always have to find out, well, how can we help them exactly? Maybe their product is priced too high or otherwise, but when we have the opportunity eventually to meet team members, sales representatives of their organization, these are some things that we find more times than not where there's some sales issues. So if you're going to be in sales, no matter what you're doing, or even looking for that next career, these are some simple advices that I would offer you today. Number one, your pre-work. And depending upon how you're wired, not everybody likes to do all that pain in the butt work of the pre-work side. Who do I want to talk to? Why do I want to talk to? And if I were to meet them, what would I say to them? You actually have to think about that. This is kind of just a side advice. One of the things that you will learn, and whether you connect with me on LinkedIn or otherwise, and you're welcome to do that, I try to help a lot of people out there. The biggest challenge sometimes is that when somebody says, I need your help, and I ask, well, how can I help you? Well, I don't know exactly. Well, you need to think about that in advance. That's where the pre-work comes in. Do you want an introduction? They're not asking for money usually, because that's a little bit clearer. But in that context, just pre-work is important. Planning. So if I were to receive that introduction from someone relative to sales, again, what would we be talking about? When can we do it? Here's the other really important tip. Whether you're working with a customer or a referral source, a network person in town, when you think about that planning, you need to also try to make it as easy on that other individual as possible. Don't make me do all the work, if that makes sense. Hey Mike, would you have time for a coffee? And that may or may not be realistic, but having a time that's convenient to my location versus St. Albert North might be better for me, assuming you want to meet me bad enough. So that makes sense? So you're planning ahead. We talked about who, and I'll get into that later on in terms of centers of influence and so on, where You know, who inevitably do you want to reach out to in your career? So we have to think about that. Hey, who would be the next 5 people that I should potentially connect with that would serve me the greatest value, that would be a benefit to me as well? So just keep that in mind. And then the other aspect, follow up, follow up, follow up. Always the case. Whether, thanks for the time, Mike, thanks for the 5-minute phone call, whatever that is, most people appreciate that simple follow-up. Or, hey, I'll reach out to you when I'm getting ready to graduate. Okay, I'm not diarizing that to follow up to see if you've completed the program. I'd like you to do that and follow up with me. So the onus and the accountability is on you, if that's fair, okay? So I'll keep rolling. So this is a bit of a high-level definition, but we look at sales defined. If you go online and Google this, the exchange of a commodity for money, the action of selling something. Now, in this context, indirectly, you're kind of selling yourself, whether it's for a career opportunity or otherwise. Even what I do professionally, I'm selling myself and my team first and foremost before I'm selling a product and a service, for sure. So, in my words, and advice to you here is, the key behind all of this, no matter what career you're going to go to, everyone else out there, 50 or 100 people or 1,000 people have done it already. You want to be in car sales, right? You want to be in culinary, right? You want to be in emergency management, whatever that is. Somebody has done it already. So how do we differentiate ourselves and stand out in the crowd that, hey, I like what that person was about. They engaged in a conversation with me for a couple of minutes. Most people appreciate that, particularly if they want to try to help you for the future, from a career perspective or sales perspective. I have been in sales for a long time. I think I'm reasonably effective at sales. One of the things that I never ever do is I'm not an aggressive, assertive salesperson, right? Being focused and having purpose of what I want to do with this opportunity, yes, but sometimes my advice and coaching advice to people, you do have to dial it back. They can be really assertive. You know, we meet at a networking event, you shake my hand, okay, Mike, I'll call you tomorrow, and you call me at 7 in the morning tomorrow. That's a bit aggressive. Right? So, hey Mike, when would be convenient that I could reach out to you and ask you a couple questions? That's a very different dialed back approach, okay? Hope that's making sense so far. Keep rolling on. So, reiterating this, when we had the pre-position call, we've had a few of those to see all over time, but what's exciting about this, and I have family members that have went to this amazing institution over time for different programs. In fact, it was culinary and currently emergency management, and also on the business side. So I can relate to what you're all doing within your program right now. Every person, you know, in every personal interaction, it's your time to shine. So whether you have someone like me in the room as an example, you know, you're not here to impress me today, and I'm okay with that. But rather, make sure you make an impression. Because they'll go, hey, so what are your career plans? And I asked a couple of you that, and you were great at your response, by the way. But just make it a conversation, right? Slow it down. Well, this is what I want to do. Do you know anybody that you can help me with? Mike, could I email you tomorrow? Slow it down again, right? Make it that personal interaction. Mike, would you mind? And sometimes relative to age, we say Mr. or Miss or whatever that, and that's up to you. I prefer Mike, by the way. But make sure it's your time to shine, that show that you're a person worthy of my time, whether I'm a prospective customer or I'm someone that would be willing to refer you to a future career opportunity, right? That's applicable. And I take that very seriously in what I do as well. Like, the bigger up the line I go to a senior opportunity in business, my time to shine is just to show that I'm a trustworthy person. That's really what I'm selling first, not anything else, not product or anything else. So keep that in mind. I want to share an example, and there'll be a couple that are threaded into this. So this is where I was at yesterday. I was at an ACG event, so corporate growth. So predominantly in the room, senior business owners, bankers, lawyers, accountants, private equity people in the room, 200 people. I've been involved in this program for about 6 years. But I want to illustrate a couple of examples strictly from a sales and relationship perspective. So I'm not showing pictures to impress you by any means, but just to illustrate some examples. So the gentleman on the far left, by the way, that's the former Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall. So he was the speaker yesterday. Great guy, by the way. Really where I want to go in is on that middle picture. Leah Tolton, who's been a longtime friend of mine, senior partner at Denton's law firm. How many of you have ever heard of Denton's before? So hopefully you have. They are the world's largest law firm. I think they have just shy of 3,000 partners, about $2.2 billion in sales. They're a pretty big deal. So I look at that, and I reference the sales. So Leah and I have had a great relationship for 5 years. Been on the board together for 3. I look at my little business, I'm a spec. She bills out more with her clients in Edmonton than my entire company does. Like, she's a big deal in Edmonton, the type of work she does. But if I were to call her today and ask her for anything, she would say yes. And it is all about the relationship and the credibility that has been built over time, right? So sales first, never. Relationship building first, and we're going to get into that in a moment. So I just want to illustrate that point, because we can be in any room at any given time and you can shine, right? But you don't have to be the smartest person in the room or the richest person in the room either. You can do that, okay? Be nice. Yes?
So how does this work in the context of a high pressure sales environment, like let's say auto sales?
Yeah, well, great question. So that's something to keep in mind. And in our business, we do a lot of work on personal assessment. So we use an everything DISC tool, for example. Honestly, not everyone is cut out to be that type of high pressure salesperson, right? That's the reality. Like, if you feel you got to sell 10 cars, and I don't care if I, cheat that little old lady with her money, most of us don't feel great about that. So we prefer not to go there. I've had the pleasure of working in automotive industry in my profession at X5. We consulted with a couple of companies over the years. I'll say it's changed, but the sales quota, that part doesn't change. Like, the salespeople are dialed in. I will share a comment very quickly just to keep us on task, but it's a great question. I'm not a Lexus customer. They've never been my customer. Lexus of Edmonton's on 170th Street. I always like to give them some love. Bruce Kirkland's the dealer principal. He's a friend of mine. You can go in there. Any one of us can go in there tomorrow, be treated like gold, and not be pushed to do anything other than, could I help you with anything? No, I'm just looking. And they don't bug you about anything. And they all make a lot of money selling cars. So the point of the story, that actually can work. But if your general manager of a particular dealership wants you to be super aggressive, then that's what you have to do. I would never work there, though, because that's not how I roll in the context of sales. Fair? So even when you think about the career, you got to go in an environment that really aligns well with what you want to do and what you're really comfortable with as well. So I appreciate the question. Okay, so we'll keep rolling on under the kind of the sales tips area. Obviously, communication is important. It is one-to-one, in a room, on the telephone, electronically, whether we're texting, emailing, or otherwise. One of the things that's really important, and we do a lot in our coaching work with clients, is that you need to adapt your style to align with that person that you're talking to. Now, I'm going to talk a certain way because I'm presenting in a room of relative size today. But if we're going to meet one-on-one and you're a little bit more quiet or introverted, I'm going to slow that conversation down and help better understand you. And I'm going to have a way better interaction with you, probably one-to-one in most cases, than this group effect. So a couple tips that I always reiterate again and again. Most of us, not all, need to slow it down. I have no problem talking. I'm pretty comfortable with that. But slowing it down has been a great gift over time, where I can slow it down. I always say, how do I talk to my 89-year-old father-in-law? It's not a sales pitch. It's a conversation. So you get to kind of dial that up and down as to where that goes. Avoid distractions. Quick one. We're communicating. We're using our mobile device, which is a handy tool. But when you want to grab a coffee with me and you're looking at texting, your partner at home or otherwise, bit of an issue for me, right? Or you're looking over my shoulder at the next cool person that you're going to see at the coffee shop, and I see that all the time. Real pet peeve for me. Just give me 50 minutes of your time, because, oh, by the way, you asked me for my time. Seems like a reasonable investment, right? I don't know, how many of you ever heard of John C. Maxwell? Read anything on them? Got a few of you in the room. I'm a big fan of John C. He's probably 75 years of age, and I think ironically he has almost that number of books out now. He has about 75 books. He's a real guru on the leadership side, but he's really evolved over time. Just a highly regarded, respected individual. And this is one of my favorite books of all time. And this is probably, don't quote me, but maybe 15 years old. This is not a new book by any means. Everyone communicates, few connect. I have built a business and a lot of network because I take the time to connect with people. Even at that event yesterday, I knew a lot of people there over time, And you say, well, how is that possible? It's because I connected with them for the last 6 years. Every time I see them, hey, John, good to see you again. That's called connection, not hi. That's communication. So a couple things. So when you're trying to connect with people, it's not about you. It's about them. Get over yourself. And that's hard for people to do, by the way. So how do you do that? Well, ask them, hey, how's it going? Hey, so what do you plan to do when you finish your program? It's all about you, not about me. It's called connection. So a few tips that come out in the book, and I use this a lot, a bit of my guiding principle, where I look at when I'm meeting someone for 5 minutes, and if they really seem like a nice person, you know, do they care for me? Now let's qualify that. Do you care for me in the context of my time, right? Because yet I don't know if we're going to be best friends or otherwise. But hey, I'm mindful of your time, Mike. I know you're busy. I just have one quick question. Already, boom, you get a check mark of favor for me because I like how you said that. Can you help me? Now keep in mind, lots of people help me, but I'm also very grateful to help other people too. So we don't have to keep score, but sometimes that's important to note that maybe that person can help me. I can help some very senior people in Edmonton by one introduction sometimes that might benefit them for a new website because of a connection. So think of it that way. This one, and I'm going to talk more about it later on, can I trust you? And those are little quick measures, is that, well, did you get back to me when you said, or, yeah, sorry, I got busy. I had a guy, and this was about 2 years ago, at Christmas time, 2 years ago, asked, hey, do you have some time to meet? I didn't, because I'd met him once before, and I hadn't quite figured him out yet. Well, could we at least have a call? I had a very busy week, so I always try to say yes, where possible. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, because I'm a nice guy. Well, guess what happened? How do you know? You weren't even there. That's exactly what happened. So then, an hour later, because I didn't text him like right away, but hey, are we still on? Of course we're not, because it's already an hour late. Hey, Mike, sorry, I had some in-laws in town. You know, I could hear him almost saying this on text. Real late night. You want to reschedule? Yeah, let's look at that in the new year. Now, just for the record, and I'm not a vengeful person by any means, but that follow-up call never happened. Because I'm not diarizing that either. Like, you kind of blew that opportunity, and you wanted my time. So, not impressive, okay? And I'm pretty open to helping people. But think about if you're not. This guy is done. He's blocked from your life forever. He's not. He's still connected on LinkedIn. And he's fundamentally a good guy, but he's got to work on time management a little bit. So interacting with prospects or referrals. So I don't know everyone what you're doing in the context of your future career opportunities. So we'll call, you're gonna be doing something. And let's assume you might be looking for a new career opportunity. So that's your prospect right now. Words have power. That seems really obvious, but become a really good communicator. I'm going to give you a little side plug, and I don't have stocks in Toastmasters, but I was a member of Toastmasters for 14 years. It served me pretty well in public speaking, but it's really helped me become better at this, even one-to-one. There's certain things that you can say that sound better to someone that you don't know very well than other words. So think about it. Yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. I can use the word, I don't know, man, but depends who I'm talking to. The CEO of a big company, probably not using that word because he may not be impressed with that, right? Speak less, listen more. Go back to Toastmasters for a quick second. So I did Toastmasters 14 years. And people say, Mike, what was your greatest learning from Toastmasters in 14 years? Number one learning. I became a much, much better listener. Because we always joke in Toastmasters, if this was a Toastmaster meeting right now, you're either talking or you're listening. Sadly, when we get one-to-one, we don't do a good job of that, but there's only 2 of you in the room. No, we won't want to talk at the same time. We want to look at our phones at the same time as well. It doesn't work so well. Ask a question, listen, have a conversation. Wow, interesting. How long have you been thinking about that? That's the simple conversation that's really, really important. And again, you have it in your handout as well. This is a model I did not create, and I want to share this because this is important. And I do that with a lot of corporate clients as well. We talk about adding value, but this is applicable to ourselves individually as well. So I look at it today, and a line that I kind of coined a number of years ago in our business is that in our world, I have to demonstrate value before the check is cut. So I think about that conference I showed you yesterday. I've been doing that for 6 years, volunteering hundreds of hours because I love the organization. I've got 2 pieces of business of that in 6 years. It's all relative. But if I were to say, do people think Mike Mack is of reasonable value to certain things? I believe so. And I didn't ask. But I think I've invested 6 years. I probably am worthy of some of that perceived value in that period of time. Not, I just opened the door for you. Okay, so can you refer me to 10 customers now? It doesn't work that way, okay? So this is helpful for yourself too, by the way, just in the context of career. How would I apply this model if I were you right now? So demonstrating value could be anything. And you know, you're at your relative stage of where you're in your career journey or changing careers or otherwise, you can demonstrate value to me. And here's the amazing way to do that sometimes. When it's all done, hey Mike, thanks for your time. Hey, is there anything I can help you with? And you might be surprised. Because even the fact that, well, there might be a question, yeah, I see you're a real guru on LinkedIn. I got a question for you. I can do that. I can give you 5 minutes of that over a coffee. You never know. So just because you're not a senior person in a big company or otherwise, you can add value to people. Create value. So you think about even doing events or otherwise. Yesterday we had volunteers that came out. They were at the U of A business program, just for the record, but they were creating value because they were volunteers. They did a lot, but they also were able to network at the same time. Win-win. There was value. Okay. Deliver value seems obvious. Sadly, all of that excitement on the front end is great, but inevitably, if you're going to do something, you actually have to do it. No, sorry I didn't make it. Sorry it didn't work out. Sorry I didn't send that to you as promised. If I say I'm going to send somebody a copy of my book, for example, I do it right away. For number 1 reason, I don't want to forget. And number 2 reason, I said I would. So I actually have to. Okay? So when you think about innovation, this is just the creative side of career. I look at where you're going in your journey. We have to step outside the box. Innovation gets used again and again, but you can't be just like everyone else. You have to differentiate yourself just a little bit and feel good about that in the process. Couple things here I want you to kind of capture and think about it, even as I'm saying it right now. Trust me on this one, just writing it down now. Is that if I were to look at your relative experience in sales, because I don't know any of you, I would look at what are my strengths right now? And you may not know, and this isn't about I'm good at closing the sale. Think about it. For me, I'll give you a couple examples of my sales strengths. I'm really, really good at building relationships. Been doing it for a very long time. Didn't even have to have a degree to do that, okay? Just for the record. Secondly, I'm really, really easy to trust. I emphasize the really, really there for effect, just so you know. But it isn't about math skills here, you understand, right? Even the greatest financial planners, or we were talking about insurance industry, or the people that do great in those type of industries, there's an example of a book I read. It's called The Sales Truth, Mike Weinberg. He's not going to give you a free copy, but you could buy it online. He talks about a Volvo car dealer in the US, #1 Volvo car salesman in North America for like 5 years in a row. And and he goes, if you're looking for the hidden gems of what he does, here's the list. And there's a couple things. He's really good at building relationships. He'll send a note to someone if he saw his client drive down the street with his vehicle, by the way. He doesn't even have to sell him one. Hey, hope you had a great weekend. Just saw you on the freeway yesterday, Cecile. Oh, wow, hey, thanks, what were you up to? And he does that, that's just what he does, and he sells more cars. Think about that. It's not, he's got the sharpest prices in town, fundamental. But then on the other side of the coin, what are some of those challenges? And these are things that we can all control. So we talk about challenges could be as simple as, well, you're a little bit assertive, so you gotta slow it down. I'm not a super patient person, but I have trained myself to become way more patient because I can't rush a sales process. The customer gets to go as fast as they want to go, right? You can't speed that up. So for you, really think about that. And then more importantly, when we get to the end of our action plans, is thinking about, well, what would I do to overcome that? So my advice is always the same. Sell your strengths, but acknowledge your weaknesses at the same time. And then what can I do to tweak that and make it a little bit better? Okay? Really important fundamentally. And I put, it's always nice to have kind of 3 on the list on both sides, and be honest with yourself. It's interesting when we do a lot of coaching in our business, if I ask someone about the challenges, it's almost the easy part. When I ask them on the strengths, geez, I don't know. So not only 2 reasons you need to know your strengths, you gotta feel good about that, and you gotta be confident, right? Because you get rejected all the time, whether it's a job opportunity or otherwise, but hey, I'm a good person, so you gotta feel that that is valuable, and it just didn't work out this time, and be okay with that, because you're not gonna win every single time, sadly, but true. All right, shifting gears a bit on the relationship side. So it kind of dovetails together. And I'm going to reference, kind of the book when I put this together. It's a story, so hopefully it's of interest to you. But why write a book on relationships is that I am the relationship guy. It's what I do my entire career. And again, as I said earlier, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to build relationships. One of the things, somebody asked me yesterday, he goes, Mike, you must know everybody. I don't. But one of the things that I'm most proud of personally in the context of my relationships is that I know a lot of different people in different roles and stages of career. I will talk to the janitor as much as I will to the CEO. And never, ever, ever lose sight of that, right? If you're going for the big one all the time, the little people are gonna notice that you just walked right over them. So never do that, okay? Be mindful. And as it states here, building powerful relationships in business, your career, but in life. I have a great relationship with my wife and my kids and my mother-in-law as well. This is all fundamentally really, really important. This is in the book, something that I'm very proud of, and this might be the best advice that I can give you all day, so make a note of it if you wish. LRT, not to be mistaken with the highly expensive transit system that we have in Edmonton, but rather something much more simple and cost-effective. LRT, in my world, I coined this about 10 years ago, like, respect, and trust. So, and the line that I'll use on the bottom, I put this quote, I'm privileged that I earned an MBA about 18 years ago, but when it comes to building meaningful relationships, and this isn't even a statement, this is, I would hand in my MBA to keep my LRT. Because if you're the smartest person in the room, and nobody likes you, respects you, and trusts you, you can't do a lot with that, would you agree? Right? Most people don't want to deal with jerks. I don't care what you're buying a car, a house, or you're applying for a job. Well, I am the smartest person here. It's obvious, so I think you should hire me. Sorry, we actually hire really nice people. Smarts are secondary. In fact, this is a true statement. I want you to write this one down. There's a video, YouTube, and it's on hospitality. You go, Mike, I'm not going into hospitality. I will tell you one thing, regardless of your career, think about hospitality for the rest of your life. I don't care if you're working at Joey's or you are in emergency management. Hospitality is really how you make other people feel. Think about it. But this video, Hospitality by Danny Meyer. And it's about a 5-minute video. I've showed it hundreds of times. I can't take credit for it other than referencing it for you. But he talks a lot about that in that context. And it's about a restaurant in that example. But he talks about they hire the 51ers and the 49ers. And for the record, I regret not having that in the slide today. But it'll be public domain on YouTube. You can see it. So here's, long story short, the 51er is really everything I'm talking about today. 51% of the reason I'm going to hire someone, as an example, is who you are as an individual, soft skills, right? The other side is the technical skills. I'm going to talk later about Stahl Peterbilt, truck dealership. I've worked there for a long time. They believe in that. They're going to hire a mechanic, service tech, and they pay them very well. You could be a great tech, but if you are a jerk, you are not getting hired. In fact, if you got hired and you became a jerk, you are no longer working there. That's guaranteed. Rarely do they get fired because they're the greatest tech ever, but they're miserable to everyone else. So, boom, deselected. Okay, so a nice reference point there. Centers of influence. How many of you have heard of this expression or phrase? It's been spheres of influence, centers of influence, whatever you want to call it. So I love this one because it's simple. I did not create it. But I learned this from my mentor, and I'm going to talk about that in a few moments. So traditionally, centers of influence isn't your LinkedIn connection list. I have a lot of connections on social media, that's great. But it's that smaller group of people. Leah, who I showed earlier that works at Denton's, she's one of my 30 centers of influence. She likes me, respects me, and trusts me. And in most ways, that's reciprocated as well. If she called me for anything, she doesn't need legal advice, but she'll call on something. I will help her without question on a Sunday because she has LRT with me as well, okay? And the point I want to emphasize on the bottom here is about you know, should you have 30 or 25 or 50, it's up to you. I have a lot of connections. 30 is an optimal number, not 100. Because I can find 100, but you want to keep it closer. Usually regular contact, and I'll put context under regular. Nowadays, when we think about digital and otherwise, that regular is all relative. Whether it's a couple times a year, I send you a birthday note all the time, and you know, happy holidays, even that's regular if you think about it in that context, okay? Networking. How many of you have networked at a public event outside of Nate before? Quick show of hands. So cool news, most of you. I highly recommend it. Now, Edmonton, fortunately, there's a ton of networking opportunity out there, and a lot of people say, well, which one should I do? You gotta feel it out for yourself, what you like to do, what you're comfortable with. There's groups like BNI, there's business associations, Edmonton Biz, Chamber of Commerce, all of that. But just a couple fundamentals. So you think about networking more than with one person, but we're in a room with 30, 100 people, as an example. Okay? I'm a member of a Synergy Network in Edmonton, and we have 100 members. We have a fall social, 600, 700 guests every year. For some, that is scary. For others, not so scary. Okay? So in a moment, we're going to have an exercise on that. And it comes up now. How many of you have ever heard of the bee in the flower concept? Okay? You have. And it's not because you got advanced slides, right? You knew it before? Okay, good. So I was making sure you weren't cheating, Cecilia. Okay, so here's the bee in the flower exercise, and we're gonna demonstrate this, and you all you have to do is stand up. You don't have to do a speech or anything like that. Now, this concept I didn't create, but I like it so much that I always want to reiterate it. So think about the fundamentals of a bee in a flower. Who's doing all the moving?
The bee.
The bee, correct. So the bee, if you think about a room right now of this size with 50 people in it, 30 people in it, okay? The bee's kind of moving around, right? We're networking, have a cocktail, hey, how's it going? Good, what's your name? And it might be faster or slower than that. We get the fundamentals of what the bee is doing. Not everyone loves the bee, by the way. I'll comment on that later. The flower, okay? If the flower is a person, this is what they usually look like. Let me go, just hang on a second here. I usually go over here because people scare me a little bit. So I'm just kind of, hey, I might not even have a drink. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Cecile invited me to this event. I'm saying this to myself, by the way. So that's what it could look like. All right, so we get the concept. Now, traditionally that bee is more outgoing. Doesn't mean they're better, they're just more outgoing. The flower, a bit more introverted like, and go, I just want to be safe over here. So I'm going to give you some tips in a minute. So here's the exercise. How many of you, and you're just going to stand, because it's good wellness to stretch a little bit here, think you're probably a bee? Stand up. Okay, and just stay standing for a moment, because I always like to do some really scientific research here as well. Okay, thank you for your time and attention, and you can sit down, please. That was tricky to get the bees to sit down. Okay, so same question, how many of you think you're flowers? And I know that the obvious seems the people that were sitting down, but for effect, I want you to stand up if you think you're a flower. Okay, give everyone ample time. So everyone had a chance to stand or sit, correct? Yes, just making sure people, I don't know, you have to decide in 1 minute or less. Okay, now, Cecile, you've been standing all the time, so I'm assuming you're probably a bee? You're a flower. Okay, so thank you, sit down. Now, and I mean that with respect, please sit down. Okay. So here's my point of the story. I've done this 53 times in the last 10 years, that exercise. Almost every time, not scientifically proven, but it's almost 50-50. You see the room? You say, well, no, Mike, I think it was 57. Sure. But it's pretty close. And you get surprised sometimes, like, really? Because when I said, you're probably being, no. But first time we met, by the way, we talked on the phone. So I'm not judging, I don't know. So here's 2 pieces of advice. You're a bee. I'm less of a bee than I used to be. Just be less aggressive and slow it down. So there's a room of 30 or 50 people tonight. Your goal might be to connect and get 5 or 10 business cards and have a conversation, okay? So that's what you could do. If you're the flower, I give 2 pieces of advice. First of all, you're over here. Take a step forward and kind of Like even stand here, because you're closer to people. And then the next piece of advice is really important, but it's simple for flowers. Just look at the most friendly person that you see right now that gives you eye contact. It's going to be you right now. So I'm going to go over there. Oh, hi, what's your name? And oh, by the way, 50 people in the room, I only have to talk to one person right now. So, and you're smiling at me at the whole time, not that others aren't, but I've caught the charisma and charm there, so I'm grateful. Where you just have an opportunity to have that conversation. Hey, so what's your name? What do you do? That's this conversation. So, not to make it too technical, but step away, meet one person, because ultimately you went for a reason to meet some people. Oh, I'm never doing that again, because they didn't come to me. Now, some people will. If I see someone a bit shy in the corner, I will approach them, because I know who they are. They're a flower. Hey, what's your name? Oh, I actually want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Cecile. She's, boom. And I love connecting, so I've taken that bee and flower and kind of threaded it together. Okay, so we get the concept? Okay. Don't be a blackjack dealer. Here's my other favorite networking comment, okay? I got cards. I'm not going to do a Shin Lim trick or anything like that. He's way better than I am. So I have met people like this before. Hi, I'm Mike, boom, 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 like literally. So don't do that, okay? So this is something I've learned, and I don't have etiquette 101 in terms of how to hand out a business card. It's not that complicated. You have a business card. So I'll say, what's your first name? Steve. Steve. So I'll go, hey Steve, what do you do? Oh, do you have a card? So Steve gives me his card. Wow, so how long have you been doing that, Steve? Boom. Yeah, 50 business managed company. Impressive. Now, Steve may ask for my business card, but even if he doesn't, I already am handing him my card as I'm looking, but it's all about his card, not about mine. Some people will ask me about my card and how long I've been doing that, and some people won't. But that's not my goal. My goal, because it's the only thing I can control, is connecting with Steve. Make sense? Okay, Steve, so now this is where you would say great things about me too. It doesn't work that way, okay? So don't do that. It's very annoying. I coined this years ago because there's a business guy I know in town who did this so many times, just drove me crazy. And I used to joke, you'd go to a networking event and you'd come home and go, how did I get his business card in my back pocket? Like literally he was that slick with this. Like he went, we talked about Rotary before, he came to an event, and this is just a volunteer luncheon meeting of 20 people. Hi, literally, I'm like, wow, and you're a guest. Like, you just say hi to people at the table. If they ask you for, that's kind of how it rolls, right? Hi, I'm famous, you want me to sign your book? You know, that it doesn't work that way. So don't be a blackjack dealer, please. One of my faves here, very quickly, packing in a lot of content here, I hope. Drop a pebble, chase the ripple. It's in the book, and I have to give credit to my mentor, who I'll talk about in a moment, Arnold McLaughlin, 85 years young, he lives in Vancouver, and we'll talk about this. You have the opportunity to slowly but steadily drop a pebble. So think about the pebble, networking, one person, one connection. You get the concept, right? The ripple is really the money, if you think about it in that regard. But we never know how long that ripple is going to take to go anywhere. But you can keep dropping pebbles, slow and steady. And it really allowed me, being less patient years ago, to being more patient, because dropping the pebble is the easy start part of the program. So, it may not seem significant. Not much you can do. It's small, subtle. Be patient. Now, I'm showing a gentleman here, Mr. Darren Rawson, very well-known guy, sits on about 12 boards in town, used to be a CEO of a public company that took their company in Edmonton and did it all over the world, massive drilling company in oil and gas in Saudi Arabia and other countries. He's become a very good friend of mine. And I was sharing the story earlier because I heard him speak 2 years ago. I was so impressed that probably 6 months later, I bought him lunch. Then I got involved in a program at the U of A over the winter. He's our speaker yesterday. He's sitting beside me. Yeah, I think I got a board opportunity for you, Mike, to get involved on a board of directors. Now, there's been no money exchanged here, but my point of the story, I didn't even know his name 2 years ago. That's been the process. But I also don't have a goal where this is going. Well, Darren, hey, if our relationship doesn't monetize into $100,000 of value for me, in 3 years, we're done. It doesn't work that way, right? So again, you can use that again and again. Reciprocity. How many of you have heard the word before? Okay? Is that a word we talk about enough, or maybe we should use it more? And I'm going to give credit to Melanie, and I'm going to talk about her in a moment. It is about the need to be seen and recognized by others. It's through the action of reciprocity, recognizing others and being recognized, them in return, that we build relationships. So it's not you scratch my back, I scratch yours, because don't keep score, because that does. Hey, I was nice to you last week. Come on, like this is almost the end of the week. It doesn't work that way. Again, but you can help people on the simplest thing. You can help open a door for someone. Think about that, and they went, "Thank you." Indirectly, that's a small step of reciprocity if you think about it in that regard. Okay, it's a very simple concept. Emotional intelligence. I want to cover that very quickly. How many of you know some fundamentals of emotional intelligence? You know, it's interesting we think about the times that we are right now, and it's your first name again, sorry?
Tristan.
Okay. We talked about, wow, I've never seen what's happening on in our life. We talked about COVID-19 and all of that going on, and life is strange. I think we have to be really agile where things are going in the next 30 days, 60 and beyond, and our economy and all of that. But emotional intelligence is a big deal, like our own self-awareness. You're kind of wired and a little bit stressed. You gotta kind of slow that down a bit, because your issues, if you go to that networking event, you can't bring those to the table right now, right? You've got to connect with people. Very difficult to do, but I highly recommend that you need to be pretty effective at that one, okay? I'll keep rolling. One of my long-standing customers is Stoll Peterbilt. They're on 118th Street on the west side of town. Been a corporate client for 8 years. Purpose of me telling you the story, I have a great relationship there. But I have a great relationship with lots of people, not just the guy in the middle, Eddie Stoll. So Eddie, Brent, Sean's in Grand Prairie, Kim's in Fort McMurray, Lloyd's a warranty guy, he's getting married in the fall. Because I know this stuff, because he tells me, because we have a good relationship. So regardless of where you're working or where you're going, you can build relationships with a lot of people, not just the most important person in the room. That's the point of the story. And the janitor. I like referencing this. Went from a business relationship to a personal. This is my oldest living friend, the guy in the middle, Harvey, 97 years of age. Him and his beautiful wife, Minnie, have been married for 75.5 years. And they just moved from their home like a week ago. Like they have lived there forever, so big deal. But he phones the other day, Mike, here's our address, so when are you coming over? Well, I don't know, I got a busy week ahead. Now with COVID-19, we got to figure out what the safety is for Harvey as well. All right, you can come over and let me know. They're in a senior's home. Dinner's on us. So, and I smile at that because I've known this guy for 20 years, but it's evolved to that relationship. And he's like the great uncle, like my grandfather in a way. Like I have so much time for this guy. And it's because of who he is as an individual. And he gives me a hard time. His famous line he gave me as a compliment, he only ever gave me one in 20 years, I'll say, so I'll share this. He said, you know, Mike, he talks like this. I don't, you know, how did he word? I got to rephrase this. He goes, I like you. You know, and that seemed wonderful. Well, thanks, Arnold. He said, no, support. Because I don't like a lot of people, but I like you. So, interesting statement. Not only that he had a number on his list, and for the record, it is pretty small. Because he's like, well, Eden and Harvey and me are tight. He's been in the hospital off and on 10 times in the last 10 years. We've been there every time. Take him out for lunch, open the bathroom door so he can go to the bathroom. We do all that stuff. And he'd say, well, you guys are close. You know why? Because I keep in touch with him on a regular basis. And I feel bad if it's been 30 days out sometimes because he's 97 and a half years of age. So I'm mindful of that. So again, just more examples here when I look at connections. So Joe has been a business connection of mine for a number of years. We go to hockey games, have a relationship. I had a business question the other day, 7 in the morning. Hey Joe, you got time for a quick call? Boom, he calls me. And he's an accountant, he's a recruiter as well. Great connection to have, by the way, a recruitment partner, so I'll give you a little plug there. But he gives me 10 minutes. I send him a note later. Hey Joe, thanks for your friendship, man, and your advice. It was great. I called him man because I could, okay, just to be clear. He comes back. No, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, just be clear. You're thanking me because I bugged you at 7 o'clock in the morning. But that's how he rolls. So I like that. And I look again, I reference Leo with Denton's and this relationship. And Mark Donnelly, the guy beside me, just referred me to a big client opportunity. Mark's been a friend of mine for 2 years. I've never asked for a referral. Mike, I got a referral for you. And I've already met with that client. So it goes back to relationships again and again and again. Got to bring up my buddy Arnold. So Arnold and I are wide in age, and he is subtly referenced in the book. The book is dedicated to Arnold, by the way. So met him on a vacation. I got remarried 8 years ago. Arnold was the best man at my wedding. Couldn't think of a better person to be my best man at the wedding. And he gives me a lot of great advice on many, many things. Point of this slide is, if you don't have a mentor today, and I don't care how old you are or how smart you are, get one, or two, or three. Really handy to have. And make it simple. And you don't get a business card that I'm your mentor, as an example. Hey Mike, would you give me some insight? And then 5 years later, we're still talking? I might be your mentor, as an example, right? It's not like a job interview. So keep that in mind and have mentors. And you can have mentors in different disciplines. You want someone that's mentoring you in public speaking versus getting a job versus being a leader versus being a parent, whatever that may be. Second part of this is really important. Again, as I said earlier, don't make everyone else do all the work. So relative to, you need to be coachable, okay? Start building a relationship. I'm gonna keep rolling so I make sure I get it all in here. We're okay? 2 minutes. Social media and relationship building. How many of you are on LinkedIn? If you're not, it's okay, different disciplines. I encourage it because I think it's really important regardless of where you are career-wise, but that's up to you. Engage, do simple things, go slow, and tip one here on the red is really the most important. If you're requesting someone and you met me yesterday at the summit, say, hey Mike, great to meet you yesterday, I'd like to connect on LinkedIn. Don't just go, connect, because you can do that. Personal note, always super important, okay? Melanie wrote the cover, the foreword of my book. I shared the story, Cecile, very quickly earlier. Melanie's become a very good friend. We have a strong relationship. Here's the catch. She lives in Amsterdam. We've known each other for 8 years. I've never met her. I asked her to do the foreword of my book. She said, yeah. Can you have relationships online? Yes. LinkedIn is not an online dating service, by the way. I just want to be clear on that. I did meet my wife on eHarmony, so I want to clarify. That was for good, for right purpose. Okay? Okay, some quick takeaways here. Goals and objectives for you. What's next? And if you did have a question, because I'm that kind of guy, you could email me and ask me that question, okay? So just, what's the meaning of life? Make the question a little easier if you can, okay? Find a mentor, as I've said. Attend a networking event, just to get out there and go, well, who am I meeting and what should I do? You got to start somewhere. Update your LinkedIn profile if you have one. If you don't, that's up to you. I don't have shares in LinkedIn. Here's the question. Would you rather have 5 centers of influence or 50 new online friends or connections on LinkedIn or Facebook? I see a 5 in the back. That's the number, right? Because I could have thousands and thousands more of LinkedIn connections. There's no quota on that. I'd rather have 5 really great centers of influence any day, okay? Small improvements each day will serve you well in the long run, right? Regardless of where you're at. It's that constant, never-ending improvement. Find 1 center of influence a week, a month. 6 a year, whatever you want, but be mindful of that for your future and your career. We talked about attending a networking event. Review your ongoing plan. Well, I'm going to be done my program in the fall or next spring. Okay, what do I need to do? Don't start looking at career opportunities 6 weeks before you graduate. You might want to do that a little bit sooner, okay? A little bit of closing, there's my contact. I do have another book if you're going to be into customer service. That one's not a freebie, sadly. That's available on Amazon. So just wanted to reference that. Hope that was helpful. We have 30 seconds for a question.
Yeah.
Or two. Anybody have a quick question or two? I'm good for time. I don't have to leave, but I want to be mindful about my cutoff. I can be here for the next 10 minutes if you need me to have a question. Yes?
First, for you in sales, it's always the toughest because you're trying to build your pipeline, establish where you're going to get your deals from. What would you say some skills or habits that people that are just getting into the sales industry can develop to kind of help them overcome those first few hard years?
Yeah, and it's great. I have some savings is probably helpful because it is hard. Even starting my business from 13 years ago, be really patient, but also don't cheat the system. Maybe the best advice is what I've tried to instill in all of you today is about relationship. If you go aggressive and try to do a fast sale or sell something you don't believe in, don't do that. Centers of influence are super handy because if you're a nice guy and I don't know you that well, I'll introduce you to people all day long. I can't guarantee you're going to get the sale. So leverage other people to help in the relationship side. If you know someone in your family or your uncles, that who you know helps, and it builds credibility for sure, right? And then be patient. Very difficult to be patient. I struggle with that, but I've learned the more stuff I put in the pipeline and the more opportunities I create, the better. But the process is always the same. Other question? Yes.
Back to the bee and flower concept. Can you be in between?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we had more time and we actually stood up in the room and we'll say, you know, put the flowers here and the bees here and here's the middle, some people would say, hey, can I stand here? Yeah, of course. But then you have to decide. Because if you go to a room with 50 people, my advice, being a flower is okay, but you gotta work a little harder than the bee. You just do, because you gotta overcome that. So, but if you're the bee, and it's easy for you, just don't be super annoying, like slow it down. If you're in the middle, it's probably a great skill set. Because I'm probably more in the middle than I used to be for sure. Because meeting 200 people yesterday, speaking in front of 200 people, that's easy for me. But saying hi to you for a minute is really important to me as well at the end of the conference, almost more than anything else. Okay? So again, yes?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you very much for the insightful thing that you just
Pleasure.
Just wondering, do you have any more like sales training or anything like that?
Well, I mean, obviously we can expand on that. We do a lot of kind of tailored work in our business. You know, this opportunity that we had today. So definitely, there's some books and so on that I'd recommend as well. But maybe you can send out an email in more context of what that looks like, right? Does that make sense? Like to say, I have a lot that if I was working with you in a company right now, I have a whole war chest of things that I would do with you as well, but it would be different than this type of forum, if that makes sense.
Are you asking, does Mike run sales courses? Because I think you work with companies, don't you, to help?
Well, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't, by design, I don't do a lot of public events like I can. Like say on the south side next week, we're having 50 people out for, I am being asked to speak at an event on networking, by the way, but so I volunteer my time for certain things, but normally the tailored coaching is more with a company than an individual, so not that we can't talk. But here's what I'm going to recommend because of time. Just send me an email though of what you're looking for, because that I could give you some quicker advice maybe than saying you got to wait until this course comes out in the fall, if that makes sense. Because you're going to be wired a certain way, okay?
Right.
Hopefully that helps a little bit, okay? All right, I'll be mindful of time, but again, I'll hang out for a few minutes knowing you've got to get back to class or whatever you're up to. Cecile, thank you.
Can you guys join me in thanking Mike? We still have one more event. We have the Innovation Challenge reception, and then we have the sales strategies for success. So just keep posted. Register for them. They're going to go no matter what. They may just go on virtually. So don't think that we're not going to continue. We are going to continue. Thanks, guys, for coming today.
Thank you. All right, good luck, everyone, and I'll hang out if you got a quick question.